Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the QT2 podcast series. This series is the Coaches of QT2 Systems. My name is Reem Joshi. I'm the content director with QT2, and our featured guest today is Coach Anne Basso. Welcome, Anne.
Hello, Rem. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Thank you. I'm just gonna jump in with the question that I asked everyone, which is, when did you join QT2 as an athlete?
So now it's been a while. 2015.
2000. And who was your coach?
With Jesse Kropelnicki.
And I'm gonna ask you a lot about your athletic background, but for now, I just want to jump in terms of when you started as a coach at QT2.
So it's been about 7 years, just in 2016. And I wanted to put forward my own knowledge and experience. And I came to the point where I wanted to share my passion, and being with QT2 and all the team support and seeing the coaches and listening to the webinars, I got on my mind to become a coach too. And that joined back also being a tutor and teacher when I was in college. So I found my thing basically, and a great structure to do it.
That's great. And we'll get into that. And I know I've talked to some of your athletes in the past, and they speak the world of you. So we're looking forward to hearing more from you on that. I want to back you way up though. So when you joined QT2 as an athlete in 2015, you had already been racing for a long time, right?
Yeah. So my first triathlon was in 2000 when I started college. No training. I just jumped in a sprint local race, and I loved it. So I ended up being hooked. But really more seriously was 2007. I did a lot of 70.3s, and in 2009, that was my first year as an elite professional athlete. So it's been 2009 to now. I stopped counting, like, I guess, my races. But yeah, 2015, I had a lot of experience of racing in the US, but then becoming a professional, I went all the way to Australia, back to Europe, and different coaching and different teams and self-coaching as well.
Okay. So did you, you said you did your first triathlon when you were in college. Did you come to it from a background, a single sport background, or?
Yeah, I grew up swimming. That was my love, and just passionate about being a swimmer. My strength was butterfly, IM, and 400 freestyle. Anything over that, I thought this was crazy. And originally, I'm born in France, and I grew up in a town of triathlon, Nice. And I watched the World Championship because it was all there for short course and long course. I guess now it's called ITU. And I thought those guys were crazy. I watched Mark Allen running the full marathon, and after going back way in the mountains, and I was like, never, ever. And when I began college, after taking a break from swimming, I needed to be back in condition. I talked to the D1 coach of my school, NC State, and he got me for a month, but then he said, you need to get a little bit more physical before being taken in the team. So he said, get fit. And the only class that was open was triathlon, as you know, your PE course. And with the teacher, she had you to do for extra credit races. So that's how I ended up doing a sprint with not really much training or experience. I even ran off a transition. I don't know if I should say it, but with my helmet on, I had to return and I had put my shirt. I mean, total beginner. But I loved the experience and I loved the crowd and I thought I would stay with short distance, of course, but then the triathlon club at NC State, they all were doing marathon and long score. And one day I just ended up doing a 13-mile run with them. And because we were talking so much, I didn't even realize that I went from doing a 5K run and suddenly I was already doing a 13-mile. And so the next year I ended up doing a marathon. And so short course kind of went away and I just focused on 70.3 and I thought Ironman was just too much with this curriculum I was doing, that was too much. So this I ended up to wait for when I was professional in 2010. And Nice was the first one.
Nice was your first one?
Yeah. So because I didn't have in mind to do an Ironman actually at that point. I just wanted to be strong at 70.3. I was placing well already. So my mind was kind of trying to get podiums. But by going back in France and being in the region of the Ironman, everyone was again training for the Ironman and there was no 70.3 around that much. So I always had to go travel back home in the US to do 70.3. So in June, they all ended up doing the Ironman. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna sign up for the Ironman. And it's even easier when you're professional because we can obviously jump into races. And yeah, that was quite an experience. I always went fast right away. And then at one point it got to me. And every time I had the energy again, I went fast again. Especially the marathon, it's very easy because it's a great pavement. I mean, the scenery is awesome. You don't realize you're really running. But then obviously if you miss the fueling or miss up your pacing at one point and you end up running close to your best 10K, it probably won't be a smart choice for your first Ironman. So yeah, and then I went back and in Florida and did the pacing and that was a lot better experience.
Yeah, that first one, lots of lessons learned from a first Ironman, even coming from being a professional. But let's talk a little bit because you said it pretty quickly. So I want to take you back. You started with the triathlons when you were in college in 2000, and then you kind of quickly moved up. And then you said you focused on 70.3 sort of in 2006, 7?
Yeah, 7. That's really,
okay.
I don't know why I just, I changed my, I went to work maybe and then back to grad school. So I don't know why at that point I just needed to race and race hard. And I just ended up placing top age grouper all the time. And I guess I enjoyed it. This is really the year where I connected back to being an elite swimmer again, because I was more and more competitive every time I was racing.
So how did you go then from being an elite age grouper to becoming a professional triathlete?
Guess meeting the coach. So again, in Raleigh, North Carolina, we're lucky when we're in college because there's so many college sports and D1 college sports. So around there was a sport physiologist, and in my school and the school nearby, there was a sport physiology class and labs. And as an outside part of my curriculum, I started doing these classes and meeting the professor in charge of the physiological lab, and I began working with them. And in exchange, they will start giving me coaching tips, and I guess that's how I ended up racing more competitively and loving to learn more about sport nutrition and training zones and VO2 max and all those type of things.
Okay. So you earned your pro license then in what year?
2008. And that's when I graduated from my master and I wanted to explore and change. So I looked where it would be good for me to improve and progress in triathlon. And I had met athletes from Australia, and we were entering the winter season. So in Australia, I would go in and it would be their racing season. And that's where the coach, he had already elite and Olympians training with him. And he said, why are you still not racing elite yet? I was like, oh, I was very nervous. And I guess at Clearwater, I was a big fan of the elite racing. And I spoke with Miranda Coffrey, and she said I was just inspired by what she was doing. And she said, but you can already race with us. And I was like, no, I'm not that strong. And then when I went in Australia, that's the same thing. The coach told me, he said, you have to ask and get your elite license. And that's how it's all started. But I guess I was not really prepared. I always thought I needed to prepare more to be an elite.
Yeah. And then, so you got your elite license, and how was it? Do you remember your first race as an elite?
Yeah, so it was in Australia. It was the long distance championship over there in Husky. And the swim, I was so nervous probably from doing my first elite race that I panicked completely. And I even had a lifeguard telling me, are you okay? Do you need to stop? And so that I took the time to breathe, and I looked where I had to go, and I said, okay, I can go back to shore. I can do it. And so and the exit, we had to climb stairs, and my heartbeat was so high. So the first lap of the bike was really bad. But then my coach said, just focus, just do what you do in training. And suddenly I came back to my own racing mental, and I ended up riding one of the fastest bike split of the day. And running, that's actually even today, that's one of my best run that day. And that day there was also Alexander, and I remember him passing him, and I was always obviously in admiration with how he was running. But that day I could actually kind of not follow him, but keep up and keep his rhythm inside and get me going. So in the end, I ended up placing really well. After 10 minutes in the race, people will tell me, are you okay? And are you going to stop? So yeah, that was my first elite race, and I always remember it for sure.
Yeah, gosh, you went through every possible emotion there, but what a turnaround. That's good. When you said you knew where the shore was, I'm like, oh, is she turning around and going back? But no, you were going forward. So
and I think the other factors there is when you kind of buy all the travel books, they all talk about all the wildlife animals in Australia, and obviously sharks is a big one. And because I ended up not being with all the other women, I was on my own, and I think that kind of was the scary part too. I was like, okay, I don't want to have a shark. So
but you live to tell. You live to tell about it. So that's good. So I think you said then you focused on 70.3s for your, at least the first part of your professional career, right? So we're in 2000, we're kind of into the later 2000s. You said that you joined QT2 Systems in 2015. So you joined already as a professional athlete.
Yeah, I was a professional, but I had been a professional for a while, and I had traveled for a long time, and just racing a lot Ironman just before joining, like up to 4, I think, a year. And I think I was a little bit cooked
Yeah.
And I needed something to be more organized, because I had always been a very organized person, at least in my education and my work, being a scientist. And I think I was missing that, and that created, I don't know if it's overtraining or over of something, but definitely a lack of organization. And hearing about Jesse and QT2, this is what I was looking for. Just reorganizing all, seeing what I had done and putting some type of structure, because up to that point, I really didn't have it. It was like, the team is racing Olympic, I race Olympic and 70.3, because you can do both. If I had moved to a team where it was 70.3 and Ironman, I ended up doing Ironman, and I never really calculated or picked the race I wanted to do. I just ended up picking the group I wanted to be with, but then it was all out of my hand, and that got to me. And Jesse and QT2 was the complete opposite. And to date, it's the longest time actually I've been with triathlon. I guess we'll call it company because it's a big, or coach, and just the structure in itself. The other one, it was month, 1 year, maybe come back, but then it was too much, so I went out. So with QT2, 2015, 2023, now it's been a long time. And the good thing too is I didn't even see it going through. It's just because it's the perfect structure I found.
So you went from a situation where it was more of a group oriented focus to one that became very specific to you, an individual to you and your goals. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And in the end, that kind of connected back to when I was in college, and I started to meet the sport physiologists and people that were passionate about sports and making it their own work. This person gave me a structure back then. I had like small training plan, but I was kind of listening and reading and putting it my own, based on my own schedule. But they provided me that structure. And then when I turned elite, this is really something I completely step outside of. And because I really did it full time, so no work, no school. I really was traveling with my bike case and suitcase and going where I thought I needed to go. And in some way, I think it was great experiences, and it taught me a lot. It taught me to be a stronger athlete, obviously. I believe a stronger coach because of all of my experiences, but at the same time, I wish I had some part of stability, at least within the year, whereas at that time it was all year round. And I think that was a little bit too much for me anyway.
All right. So I want to, you started working into it in that last answer is to talk about you as a coach now. So you started coaching with QT2 shortly after you came in as an athlete. And so what made you decide that you wanted to take on coaching hat?
With speaking with Jesse, I think, and I believe Jesse is very educational. And when I began college, I was actually an engineer, and I ended up to be in chemistry for research. But in some way, Jesse, is engineer as well. And I think that kind of connected the mind. And as part of my college scholarship, I taught at NC State, and I loved teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing Jesse teaching and the webinars with QT2, and I thought, oh, maybe that can be a good match. And also we realized that I guess I don't know the right word, if it's burnout or if I needed to step outside of my own racing take a little bit of perspective. But I think with talking to each other, we realized if I was doing something like this, it would probably help me also in my own racing.
Okay.
And at that point also, I had a hard time doing the long workouts. And so I ended up just taking a full break and really focusing on coaching. And I went to the camp with QT2 and I just step outside as a coach. And I like to have that perspective, and that reconnected me back to my passion to share it with others. So that's how I became more full-time coach now rather than an athlete. And when people ask me, I always say I'm a coach. And racing, even though I'm still elite, and obviously when I race, I still always want to do my best. And if I can do my personal race record, I would go for it. But for me, that's my passion now. I put back this as my passion and not what I focus on all the time. Now it's coaching first and then my racing, if I can do it. Just like the one that the athlete that connects to us, and they have their own things going on, and racing or training is their passion, and they want to do the best they can with it.
Okay. So do you think that your experience, and you had a lot as an athlete, has impacted the way that you are as a coach, or that, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I believe that shaped me. And I think from the beginning, when I was swimming, it was natural for me to swim pretty quickly. So when I was probably 5 is probably too early, but quickly I ended up being in other groups like the age up, and I ended up being with a very good coach for swimming. In France, there were the national coaches, and from them I learned a lot. And because I was always kind of the youngest, I was stepping out of a little bit earlier, and I just love listening to my coaches, and I loved watching the others swimming and improved on that. So that was like all the way to I was 14. And then in triathlon, I think this is the way I did it. Again, with college, I started studying coaching and sport physiology, nutrition. All of the essay I had to write, I will do it on something about sport in some ways. And then just working with sport physiologists, I learned from them. And then elite coaches in triathlon from different countries, I learned different things. And then I also saw things that they were great and I would never have thought as a coach probably, but then I also saw things that maybe my coach missed with me. And I think that helps me to be a better coach, especially when you're elite. Everything is oriented as a performance, especially if you're paid for it. So sometimes I think the coach kind of missed on something, that they were rushing a little bit too much. Whereas in triathlon, when you're in your 20s, it's still really young. I mean, you can be a world champion in the 20s, but in the 30s or late 30s, we've seen also athletes that just rise at the late 30s. And I think that's something, at least with the coaches, they kind of miss sometimes, for example, in triathlon, because it's a lot more complex than just a single sport too. You have to put all three together. And if you push too much in one, it ends up being too much. And I think having that experience as an athlete and being passionate about education and my sport in general and well-being and science, I think all of this connects to who I am as a coach today.
And would you say, is there a type of athlete that you work with?
I I think I just very adaptable and versatile. Again, just from all of my experience, I've done beginners to obviously professional, not just me. I coached also other women, professional and men. And I just love coaching and all the challenge that it brings. I'll just say that if you like me to coach you, it's probably know your own goals and your passion, why you're doing this. And as long as you can communicate with me, all of these that motivates you, I'm sure I can be your coach.
Okay.
But you have to know why you're doing it before coming to me. I'm not the one that I don't think can tell you why you're doing it.
Yeah, wow. No, anyone can tell people why they're doing it, even if they want them to. But so of the athletes, I mean, from the beginner to professional, I mean, every athlete along the way has their doubts about whether they can succeed, if they can do something or not. So when an athlete comes to you with uncertainty or questioning their ability, what do you say to get them back on track?
So first, I don't say much. I usually go back, even for any athlete that come, I try to figure out where they come from. So if I take a one-on-one, I'll go to the data. I always try to go back to the most information I can have on the athlete. And from this, and again, I think that comes from all my experience and also my coaching experience. I'll show them that from what they've done and where they are at, that they can build the confidence that they can do it. So I usually, I guess, a scientific approach. I go to what I know, and then I'll show that this is what they already have done, so they can do that again.
Okay. So as a coach, what would you say is your biggest challenge that you face?
So I don't want to put one over the other, because every time that I work a challenge with the athlete and we figure it out, I think it's a big win, and this is why I coach. It's don't have one in particular that I can put off. There's many. Anytime I believe we reach the athlete goal or overcoming a challenge or a doubt, I always say to them, I'm proud of you. I mean, you did it, and you did it well. So yeah, I cannot put one over the other.
Okay. And then, I mean, on the flip side of it, your greatest success, it sounds like it's overcoming challenges, right? Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Because I guess that's probably, if I say some of my coach at weaknesses, I think that's something they can tell about me. My weaknesses is to focus too much on data and maybe a place. And that's what I don't do as a coach now. I see success in other things. Again, I'm much better with my own athlete than probably on for my own. But yeah, this is why I don't put a success over the other. It's based again on where the athlete comes from and where he's gone to. So that's to me a success.
Okay. So we've talked about yourself as an athlete and yourself as a one-on-one coach. You also do other things for QT2 Systems other than coach. Do you want to talk a little bit about the other hats that you wear?
Yeah, so I actually began with writing mission plan, and now I'm I guess the title, if we can say I have a title, mission plan coordinator. So I make sure that all the athletes are doing well, and that we meet their expectations, and always make sure that their question can be answered. So that's part of my, in addition to writing the plans with other coach, I supervise that all is going well. With my experience and now being a long time with QT2, I've also ended up doing training plans also for our partners, and also gave a little bit my own thoughts for webinar contents.
I think that this year, so we do webinars on different courses, and I have a strange feeling I'm going to be coming to you on the Nice webinar this year. So wait for that call.
Actually, that's how this series of webinars started, is because the 70.3 World Championship was in Nice. I don't remember which year now, and I was like, I have to do this one. And again, that's kind of the same way I process with being a coach. I've been to so many, pre-race meeting where I feel like they make us, especially at least professional, we have to be there. And I'm always like, they miss on so many things, and it's not much more than what they gave us already on paper. So this was my goal with doing the preview at Nice. I knew they will not speak of things that are important, especially if you want to be competitive or even for your own security. And I thought we can bring things like this to our pre-race, remembering our fundamental also that makes you have a great race, because you're going to pace yourself well and fuel yourself well. But in addition, if we can prepare to them what it is to go to a new place and what they can expect, I think we can really nail their race outcome. So that's kind of how it's all started. So I should go back to the World Championship now in Nice.
Yeah, well, I think so. Speaking of Nice and France, I've been looking at this photo behind you the whole time, and I'm like so intrigued by it. So I finally have to ask, can you tell me about the photo you selected behind you? Because I assume you're not in France right now. So
no, and it's definitely not that weather yet. Right now it's probably feet of snow over there. Actually, that came up when we started speaking today. But I almost forgot that the World Championship was in Nice. But for people that are qualified, this is deeper in the Alps. But when you get to the top and probably around 56 miles of the Nice course, you're going to get that kind of desert-like landscape of the mountains. And I picked this race because I wanted to pick one that not everyone knows, but also that provided me the most challenges. And this is in the heart of the Alps, right by the l'Alpe d'Huez climb. And it's called Embrun for the name of the town. It takes place, for an iron distance. And the reason that's kind of my most proud of moment, or the one that stands out, it's because of all the challenges the course brings. One of them is you start in the dark, and for about, at least for my time, about halfway, you swim in the dark, and you only have like a small boat with a headlight. I guess I'm lucky because I'm toward the front of the swimmer, so I have no idea what it is to be more at the back, except that if you have a nice day that is going to be out with the moon, you can get a little bit of lighting, which is gorgeous. But that's also a challenge if you're nervous or just swimming in the dark. So that's the first challenge to overcome. And then you have to go to this pass on the photo, which is close to 8,000 feet. And you have like the last 10 miles are about 3,500 feet of climbing. And even if you're a great climber and you love climbing, it's like doing years running, or even if you love it, you have to do it. So you have to nail the fueling, the pacing, and I think that regroup all of what we always want to teach to our athlete to have a strong race. And once you've done this, you have not only the pass, but you have the valley with the wind, maybe a weather that goes from 35 Fahrenheit in the morning to over 100 because some part of the valley are very desert-like and very sunny. Or then I never had this, but you can have a rainy day, which I guess maybe that's worse. And then it's over 112 mile, but you finish at 112 mile getting to transition, and they make you do a 5-mile climb just before going back to transition. Again, that's a mental killer and a physical leg killer because you climb for 5 mile, and it's pretty decent climb and steep, over 5%. Mm-hmm. And then you have a nearly run. And the reason I picked this is because I'm proud of every challenges I had to adapt. And you cannot plan for them because you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to be warm, hot, if you really need to fuel a lot more because of the energy you spend on the climbs. But then you don't want to overfuel, which I did once. And then for the run, because you still have to run a marathon, it's obviously we know what it does if you overdo it solid wise. So every moment of the race, you have to adapt and overcome the challenge. And I think that's the race I ended up overcoming all the challenge the best. And I wish I could have done that on other Ironman. And really focus on just, oh, I can do my best today, rather than looking at other factors, which place I'm at, or the time where everyone is, or this one I like because there's so many outsider challenges that if you really focus on your own self, you can really almost amaze yourself or be proud of yourself. So that's the reason.
Sounds like a fantastic day, and just a good reminder of, I mean, you focus on that triathlon, anything can happen. You can't control what happens, but you can control how you respond to it and what you do. And
I think with the first timer, that this experience, they have it when you do your first Ironman. But that's something you kind of lose when you start doing them a lot. And this is why sometimes I like to go back to that race, because it almost feels like every time it's a beginner time, because it's always different. At least my experience every time I've been there has always been like this. Was the other Ironman, after a while I get accustomed to, or it becomes more like the way I train, or there's something that is not as special as when it was the first time. Was this one, because of so many different factors, it's always brings something new. And I even had to finish the last 5K really hard, and I ended up sprinting at the end. I don't even know I came with that energy to do the last 20 minutes, like if it was a 5K race. Yeah. And that experience I've only added maybe my first Ironman and then this race.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. Well, I want to thank you, Anne, for taking the time and talking to us today. Really appreciate hearing about your history as an athlete and as a coach with QT2 and all that you bring. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rim. Thank you all again for all the great questions you always bring out. And I hope I gave a little insight of who I am a little bit more to all of our listeners today and our athletes. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and I look forward to connecting again and maybe jump on another podcast.
Okay. Yeah, great. Love to have you. All right. Bye-bye, Anne.
Bye.